Doing well. Welcome to Franchising Brand Stories, episode 2. I hope you've all had a great week in franchising and things have been going well for you. So, I want to introduce this show, as we always will do, by explaining the premise behind the show. So, Franchising Brand Stories has come about as a project with myself after doing the franchise show and the ever wise Simon Wise. Um, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to bring the stories behind the brands to the forefront and allow people to see what's behind those brands and those stories. Because when you're deciding which franchise company to start your journey with, you want to be able to understand as much as you can about them. And we feel it's a really important thing to bring these stories to people because it helps you become aligned. Um, so each week we are going to take a lovely brand and a lovely guest, and this week is no exception. I'm going to start with a little introduction. So I'm going to read this one off. So it's going to start beautifully from Shipley with love. And I'm a James Bond fan, so I like that one. There are no brands more synonymous with franchising in the UK than Driver Hire. From a single office in Shipley, West Yorkshire, its network now extends across the whole of the UK and Northern Ireland. Driver Hire also has an international presence following the establishment of Driver Hire Australia in 2012. Annually, its army of temps fills over 500,000 shifts for a wide variety of transport operators and other organisations. As they celebrate their 40th anniversary, which is fantastic, we are joined by the wonderful Graham Duckworth, Franchise Sales Director, to discover just how it all started, what their journey has been like, and the exciting plans they have in place for the future. Now, this show is very much audience directed and ad-libbed mostly, but I did read that from my beautiful card there as well. So that's very professional. So we absolutely encourage comments and hope that you can join in with some comments and ask any questions that you might have. But without further ado, it's over to Graham to just expand a little bit about what you do and how you've come to be in your position where you're at.
Well, thank you, Harvey. That was a very generous introduction to me and to Driver Hire. So thank you for that. In terms of Driver Hire is more important than me, but I'll start with me if that's okay, just to set the scene. I've been at Driver Hire for half of the 40 years that Driver Hire has been around. So, been here for a good chunk of the time. And my role here at Driver Hire for the last 12 years has been as franchise sales director. So, in a nutshell, that means I'm involved in helping recruit new franchisees, helping them through the sale process. And just as importantly, when the time's right for existing franchisees to sell, because of course everybody will leave at some point, we provide a service of supporting them to find a buyer and trying to help the sale process as smooth and easy as possible for both parties. And obviously it's part of that is an approval. It's important that as people are assessing Driver Hire as potentially a suitable business for them, we as a franchisor, a responsible franchisor, have to assess whether somebody is the right fit for us as well.
Yeah, it's very important.
That's my role for the last 12 years at Driver Hire. Driver Hire as a business, as you rightly said, we're celebrating our 40th year this year, so big celebration. In a nutshell, we're a recruitment business. The name Driver Hire is a bit of a giveaway. We specialise in supplying drivers, largely temporary drivers. We can find permanent staff as well, Doesn't have to be drivers, non-driving staff, warehouse, logistics, but that's the area that we specialize in, and that's where the majority of our franchisees generate their revenue, by finding drivers and putting them into jobs. There's lots of companies out there that need a flexible workforce, for peak periods, for holiday cover, for sickness cover, and that's where we come in. We recruit drivers, we assess them, we make sure they have the right skills, and then we match them into assignments, and obviously try and keep the customers happy. Hopefully they're happy with the service, and obviously from a driver's point of view, we're trying to help them earn a living, and if they do a good job and we do a good job, we can keep them busy for week after week, month after month, year after year. We have added out other bits to the business as well. With a training business, you mentioned the fact that we've expanded to Australia as well, but the largest part of our business is the recruitment of temporary drivers. So hopefully that's enough of a scene setter to give you an idea of what we do and what I do.
Definitely. Absolutely. And talking of Simon Wise, Simon is already with us very early on. Great to have you here, Simon. And I know that you've had a great deal to do with driver hire in your past. So it's going to be fantastic to hear your thoughts as we continue this conversation and delve a little bit deeper into the story behind this brand. It's really valuable service you're offering there. I mean, staffing is such a big challenge for any organization, and to have that flexibility of getting the staff in place and knowing that that's not perhaps much of a concern as it would have been is really important, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And just I guess expanding on a point and illustrating a point. Let's take a construction business, for example. They're predominantly busy across the summer months when the weather's warmer, longer days, more houses are built, that type of outdoors construction work. So, of course, they have a peak period across summer and they're quieter across winter. So they're not going to hire a core of drivers that are going to be sat on the backsides across winter. So they hire a core of their own drivers, and as things get busier, they'll use the flexibility of temporary workers to add to their workforce or reduce their workforce. It helps them control costs and manage the finances of their business a bit more effectively.
Yeah, I suppose as business goes up and down, so can the level of staff that they need. And if you have that flexible approach, you can approach it that way. Fantastic. Where would you say you're at right now as a business, just to give people a sort of an idea of your size and your spread across the country and across the globe?
Yeah.
Where would you say you're at right now?
Of course. Well, I'll focus on the UK because that's where we have franchisees. So obviously we're a mature business, having been operating for 40 years. We've got just over 100 offices in the UK. I think the official number is 104. Network revenue is, I won't go into loads of figures, but network revenue is well over 100 million a year. Average franchisee turnover last year was about 1.3 million, just to give you an idea of there. And as I say, the focus and the majority of revenue that our franchisees generate is from supplying temporary workers. But I think we've become, recruitment, wind the clock back, and recruitment, you operate out of an office, drivers come to the office, they come to register. It's quite a traditional face-to-face business. I think the business now is very different, more technology-led, new systems that allow us to operate in a more sophisticated way. So, we have to make sure that we change with the times and that we can offer our customers, our franchisees, of course, who operate the business, better systems that help retain customers and candidates a bit easier. We might touch on that a bit later, but if you want to go into that in more detail. But as a note,
absolutely, we definitely will.
We're developing business that, you know, is very different to where we were 10 years ago. IT has moved on. AI, of course, is going to be predominant over the next
Oh,
few
absolutely,
years.
absolutely. One of the things I was going to ask you now, actually, and I think it's time to sort of take you back a step now, and you know, we've set the scene as to where you are as a business right now. Where did it begin? You know,
Yes.
how did the company become
Yeah,
such a successful franchising business?
that's it. Well, you know, I wasn't there at the start, Harvey. I know I am old enough to have been there at the start, but I wasn't. But you know, I knew that one of the
You're a
two.
youngster, Graham. It's no,
So,
it's
so I can give you. I'm going to answer. You know, the answer that I'll be able to provide will be, you know, perhaps a general answer rather than very specific. But I know that the two founders, you know, were local to Shipley. You mentioned Shipley at the beginning. One was a driver, a guy called Mark. He was a busy driver and kept getting asked for driving work. So I believe he then started subbing some of the work out to other drivers, and you know, realized that, you know, he could, if he had drivers working for him, you know, he could generate more revenue, he could earn more money. And then he partnered with another guy called John, who was perhaps the more financial savvy of the two. And I think between the two of them, that was where the kernel of the business began. You know, it was somebody who knew driving, somebody who knew finance. They obviously set up a recruitment business in Shipley, as all franchise models do. You know, they replicated it and opened a second office. And then 3 years after, or 4 years after the business started, the first franchised office opened. So in 1987, the first franchised office opened. I think it was Newcastle. It's either Newcastle or Sheffield. It was one or the other. And then from there, the business quite quickly expanded. You know, 4 years later, there was 10 offices. Oh, sorry, 2 years later, there were 10 offices.
wow.
7 years later, there were 45 offices. 9 years later, they're up to 73 offices. So, you know, some very quick expansion there. And I think, you know, that's one of the things that franchising allows, you know, without the business owners having to fund the opening of every store, office, premises. You know, the franchisee brings their own capital to the business, which allows for that level of expansion. So yeah, winding the clock back, it was the germ of an idea between a driver and somebody that had a bit of experience in finance, opened a recruitment office, realized that it could work, opened a second office to prove that it could work, and then franchised it from there.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for, you know, taking us back, because it's good to sort of know, you know, where you are now, where it all began. A question I was going to ask you is, you mentioned about offices as well. Give us an idea of the sort of the fundamentals you need to start this particular franchise. So you need a physical bricks and mortar building. It's not something you can run from home, as
Yes.
an example.
And there's two main reasons why it's important to have a physical office. Well, probably more than two, but you know, you need a professional working environment, and the franchisee can't run a recruitment business by themselves. You know, it's a busy environment. You've got customers to look after, you've got drivers, you've got the administration that comes with that as well, and the compliance. You've got to try and win new business. So the franchisee needs a team, and it's important to have, you know, the team together, you know, working on growing the business, talking to each other, you know, working in a cohesive way. That although you can do that remotely, we proved that during the pandemic. I think you still get a better working environment and a more productive working environment when you have the team together. And secondly, you know, and very traditionally, we had drivers that had to come to the office to register, you know, bring their documents. We could check they were eligible to work in the UK, etc. That's moved on. We might touch on that if we talk about technology, but
Yes, we're going to go back to the future at some point
yeah,
here.
exactly. So,
Getting the name of my favorite film.
that's not so important, but still, it's great to have drivers come into the office and build relationships with them. And, even though some people might think of a driver as a temporary worker, we've had many of our offices have had temporary drivers that have worked with them for years and indeed decades. So some people view temporary work very much as a career choice rather than, a fallback position of not having a permanent job. So yeah, I think, and also, in my opinion, if you've got an attractive office, it's nice to have customers come to your office as well to show them the professional environment that you operate out of.
Definitely. Definitely. I loved what you said there about building relationships. I think we'll touch on that in a moment. I just want to quickly recognize the people that are here. So we'll start off. We've already recognized Simon. Great to have you here, Simon. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We've also got the lovely Will Strike from the BFA. So
Excellent.
fantastic to have you here. And Will's put great brand, a regular BFA Awards finalist. Fantastic case study for a brand story here, Harvey. Yes, I completely agree. And thanks for being here, Will.
Thank
Really
you, Will.
appreciate it. Yeah, great. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. We've got the lovely Jason Kaber from SEO Samba here, one of the sponsors of the franchise show. So great to have you here. Really looking forward to hearing your thoughts as well as we continue the conversation. And we've got Emily Price. Great to have you here, Emily. And this is great. So we've got a question. So we're gonna touch on this question right now, I think. So Emily's put, proving the model at the start is so important. Great to take a look back to where such an established, successful brand began. Yes. What's your thoughts, Graham, about proving the model? What do you know of? I know you were with you've been with the brand a long time, but do you know anything of the story of proving that model right in those early days with
only in general terms, so you have to forgive me here, but know that obviously the first office was established, as we said, in Shipley, which is in West Yorkshire near Bradford. The second office, and of course, proving that it can work in one office is one thing, but if the idea is to expand it, it's really important for the franchisor themselves to prove that that it's not just a one-off success, that that one office is working. If it can be replicated. And replicated it, I believe the other office was in Bradford, which, was very close by to the first one. It just gives an opportunity to prove to the franchisor that the concept can be duplicated. But then even more importantly, when the franchise brand is going out talking to people, especially when the company is not known, at that stage, nobody has heard of driver hire other than the customers and drivers that work with them. You've then got to persuade people to part with their money, that it's an investable business. And the only way really that you can do that is to say, look, we've taken a concept, we've duplicated it, it's worked here, and therefore you can have some confidence that if you open a driver hire business and you get the same level of support, that you can make it work too.
No, that's fantastic. I want to go back to something you said, which is about building relationships with both the franchisees that you meet and the fantastic drivers that you have working with the teams. You must have met some fantastic characters over the years, and there must be some really interesting stories of successes. And I'm going to bring up a question actually from Simon at the same time.
Okay.
Simon's put, what skills and experience do you look for in potential franchisees with drive hire? So I'd like you to approach this in two ways. Also about the characters as well that you see, because I think that'd be really interesting.
Of course. Yeah, you're right, actually. I mean, skills what we're looking for isn't just a list of transferable skills. So it's not, if you imagine a recruitment business is a combination of providing strong levels of customer service, the sales activity required to win new customers, and then there's the ability to follow a process and be operating in a compliant manner. So I think the skills we're looking for are strong customer service, comfortable talking to customers and going out and seeing people, but also an eye for detail to make sure that the office operates properly. So you could take somebody from lots and lots of different industries that could be a tick, tick, tick against those transferable skills. The additional element, and perhaps this is just as important, but it may, in my opinion, more important. It's having the right personal qualities. The right attitude, somebody that is motivated, somebody that's going to. This is a real key one. Somebody that understands it's a franchise, and that means being part of a bigger thing. It's not just coming along and doing whatever they like. It's being able to work with other franchisees, work in a harmonious way, be willing to share ideas and best practice. So, it's identifying those personal qualities and making sure that, not only do the skills match, that, somebody is coming into the business that we feel we're going to have a good working relationship with. If they've got the skills and they haven't got the right attitude, it would be a definite no from us. We're just not going to recruit somebody that could potentially be, I'll use the phrase bad apple. That's probably been a bit unkind to, to some by labeling somebody that way. But, if it's somebody that's going to, impact the harmony in the network, it's just not the right hire, and they're not the right person for the business.
And you've got to be able to say no. It's best for everybody that you're aligned with your values. And on that franchisee journey, when you're getting to know a franchisor, you're discovering whether you're aligned. I think passion is got a lot to do with it. There are certain skills that can be taught. I love what you said there about harmonizing, that balance. A franchisee is an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur that knows the value of a proven model.
Exactly.
And they can work within that model and bring the best out of that model. So I also like what you said, willing to share. I think that's really important as well. You can't keep a good idea to yourself in this scenario.
And as the franchisor, who are we to say that we've got all the ideas? So, leveraging the experience of franchisees who've maybe worked in different industries and bring different ideas, is obviously in a sensible way, have steering committees, we have an online forum where ideas can be shared, etc. But, we definitely listen to franchisees, and we want to, we want to bring on board any good new ideas that people have.
Absolutely. No, that's great to hear, because I think when a franchisee's got an idea, they want to be heard. They want to be they're part of a big network. And that definitely needs to come across. That's fantastic to hear you say that. I suppose another question I was going to ask is, you mentioned there that it's people that, being good with people, being good, able to talk to people. Would you say, because I was going to ask you what type of person normally comes, what's a typical avatar, if you use a word, for, your franchisee. Is there that, or is it just trying to find a person that's got those attributes and values?
In a way, for my job, I wish there was a perfect avatar, because it would make my recruitment of franchisees and identification of them a bit easier. So no, they don't fit into one avatar. I think it's going back to the fact that we have different characters in our network. You have more mature, experienced business people that might be in their 50s and 60s. And at the other end of the spectrum, you might have somebody, and we have, some people in their 20s who have less experience, but maybe bring different qualities to the business. So, we try not to be too blinkered. Obviously they have to have a mixture of the right skills and personal qualities, but that could fit somebody who started as an apprentice in an office and built up a bit of experience, or it could be somebody that's worked in a corporate, high-level corporate job that is just sick of conference calls and international travel and just wants something closer to home where they have their own business and they can perhaps strike a slightly better work-life balance. So there's, if we were to draw for an avatar, we'd be drawing 4, 5, or 6 different avatars.
Oh, that's good. We've got a couple of questions which I'm going to bring up in a moment, but I did want to touch on the fact that number one, you said that you've got some great characters, and also you've got some younger people in the business as well. I'm very, very much an advocate of young people getting into franchising and experiencing that and seeing it as an option where they might not necessarily do that. Have you got any good stories of your younger franchisees and their successes?
Yes, I've actually, yeah. And you've not teed me up for this. This is, I just, this is an example of somebody very recently who became our youngest franchisee 3 years ago. He was 22. I won't say who he is or exact location because I might give you an idea of how successful he's been. But he started as an apprentice, as a 16-year-old for one of our franchisees. Built up his experience, and the neighbouring territory was a vacant area. It's a seaside resort. We perhaps didn't look at it as a prime territory. As a franchisor level, we didn't think, oh wow, we need to get a franchisee in here. But he persuaded us that this territory was viable and that he could make a good go of it. And he started building up some business in that area. And he came to us and said, I'd like to open my own driver hire office. So, age 22, 3 years ago, he opened his office. He's now 3 years in, and the growth of his business has been absolutely, astonishing, really. And because I'm not specifically saying who it is, I can give you a bit of an idea of the numbers. So first year, his turnover was 900K. Wow. Second year, he did 1.5 million. Third year, he did 2 million turnover. Wow. And this is, from one office with a small team supplying drivers and predominantly
amazing.
So his mid-20s, he would say himself that when he started as an apprentice, he would have never dreamt to have been in this position in his mid-20s. So, if he maintains his focus, he could, very easily, very quickly, set himself up for life. And, that's the sort of, clearly that's a really positive example, but that's what shows when somebody with motivation, the right attitude, willingness to work, build a good team, that's the sort of performance that somebody, a young person can bring to the table.
Wow.
So it's not alone. We've got some of our most successful, 3 of our most successful franchisees are, in that age bracket.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Late 20s.
That's so good, so lovely to hear, because as I say, I'm personally such an advocate of highlighting this as an option for younger people. Simon's just made a comment here, and we've got another one where we'll go back to from Jason, but Simon's put, one of the things I know is quite unique about driver hire is the longevity of franchisees. Many have been with the system for many years, going through several renewals. What do you put that down to? Great question, Simon.
Good one. They're all mad. No, absolutely not. No,
you're such a lovely chap as well.
Yeah,
you help them out.
I think the genuine reason is they feel part of something bigger than working in their own office. I think the fact that, yes, of course, on a day-to-day level, they're working in their office with their staff, but they also, on such a regular basis, on a daily basis, they're talking to their neighbouring franchisees. They've got relationships with other business driver hire franchisees across the network. Good relationships with head office as well. We tried to make sure that, going back to franchisee recruitment, that the right people are recruited and the right people at head office are recruited as well, so that we have a good working relationship between the two. I mean, one solid reason, of course, is that financially it works for them as well. If they weren't making money, they would very quickly leave. So it's a combination of financial reward and also the enjoyment that they get from working in the network. And I think providing they provide a service that helps people earn a living. The drivers that they're sending out to work are reliant on this income, and there's a lot of job satisfaction from that, supporting the local community, the drivers and the customers that are there. So they develop really strong relationships with the drivers and with the customers, and it just makes it so much more difficult to leave when you've got the relationships and the financial success.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. You're in an organization and in a world where you're helping people on two levels as a franchisor. You're helping your franchisees with their businesses for them to become successful, but you're helping those wonderful drivers who are doing an amazing job to also become successful as well. And it's that three-tier organization that's great. So that's a fantastic question. Thanks for that, Simon. Let's have a quick look at what Jason has put here. Graham, at the franchise level, does driver hire keep a profile on each driver for education certificates, experience gain, etc., and a career path and education for their development? That's a great question. How do you help those drivers with their development?
Well, first of all, keeping a profile. I mean, it starts at the very beginning when we register a driver, because as you can imagine, it's a serious business sending a driver out to drive a large lorry. The danger of sending the wrong person out is significant. So, understanding who the driver is, checking their references, checking their license, checking their knowledge, that begins at the very start, an interview process as well. So we obviously understand their level of experience, their driver license category, and if somebody wants to develop their career, say somebody starts off typically as a van driver, if you've got an ordinary license, you're able to go out and drive a small van, but then the next step up, for some people, unless you're of a certain age, I think it was 1997, anybody that passed their test before then is eligible to drive a vehicle up to 7.5 tons in weight. I'd qualify for that, but there's no way I'd get behind a vehicle that was that big and heavy. I'd be terrified, and I'd be an absolute danger on the road. But you get drivers that want to work their way up to, their license categories, and could potentially drive a big articulated vehicle. And of course, the incentive for the driver is that those more experienced categories are paid better. So we as on an office level and at head office level, because we have a specific training division, we can support drivers with their license acquisition, support them with training, help them work through those license categories, and ultimately earn more money through it.
Fantastic. So you're sort of helping people on two levels there. That's fantastic. Love that. A question I was going to ask you there is what, when you're thinking about starting a driver hire franchise, what does that journey look like from the point you reach out, make that email, that first contact to sitting in your brand new office with lots of lovely and wonderful drivers ready to send out?
The journey's a long one, really. I would say typically the journey is 6 to 9 months from first inquiry to actually, sat in your office commencing trading. And that could be for a new start franchisee or a resale, somebody buying an existing business. Because we could break this down into categories. The first phase is, that person trying to work out if Driver Hire is the right business for them, and us as a franchisor trying to work out if the person's the right fit for us. So that typically involves 2 or 3 video meetings with myself and my colleague Jack, who's a franchise sales manager, trying to pass on information, impart information to help somebody work out whether it might be right and for us to assess. Then the next stage typically is, conversation with one of our area managers, with our network development director. But the real key one during that initial due diligence phase is talking to franchisees. So we're really careful, and I would strongly recommend that if anybody is looking to join a franchise, any franchise at all, it's having the opportunity to talk to any franchisee in their network, not just a small spoon-fed number that the franchisor feels is going to give a positive story. So we share the contact details of all the franchisees in our network, and that person is given the opportunity to phone whoever they wish. We obviously give our franchisees some advance warning and the name of the person that's going to be making calls, but we don't ask who that person is planning to call. They just make calls. And, the feedback from the franchisee is worth 10 times the information that a franchisor shares, because people are going to trust that more, and quite rightly so, quite understandably so. So that's the sort of early due diligence stage. At the end of that, somebody's getting a good idea and we're getting a good idea of whether the fit's right. Then it's more a phase of working on a financial plan, working on finances, working out whether it's going to be possible, agreeing a deal with the selling franchisee. And then so that's phase 2, and then entering third phase is the practical steps to prepare for taking over the business. So that in itself is typically a 10 to 12 week stage. Getting your loan approved, setting up a limited company, writing your business plan, registering for VAT, etc., etc. So all in all, if you add those 3 phases together, you're typically looking at 6 months to 9 months. So we strongly encourage people not to rush it. It's a massive decision for us, the franchisor, and for the franchisee. So it's really important that process isn't rushed.
No. Where in that process does the commitment stage happen?
It's somewhere. I described it as 3 phases there. So I would say in that second phase, where somebody has worked out their financial plan, worked out that that they can afford to do it, and that the numbers stack up. They've agreed a sale price with the seller, if there's a seller involved. They've been to the bank, and the bank have said, this looks good, subject to all our checks. It looks like we're going to approve the loan. And it's that sort of stage where, as I say, we introduce the more practical actions that people are going to work on. So, they're obviously shown a copy of the franchise agreement. They'll use a solicitor at that stage to make sure that they're comfortable with the content of the agreement.
Great.
That from the beginning to that decision being reached, again, you're probably looking at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, could be longer. I mean, obviously it depends, but at the quickest, it's probably 6 to 8 weeks.
No, that's great. Fantastic. Let's have a look at a couple of other points that have come in here. We've got a comment from Gerald. Gerald's new to the show. Great to have you here, Gerald. And he's put, it's great to see the wide age group that is considered to become part of this business. This makes driver hire unique, in my opinion, and very interesting to potential new franchisees. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about younger people, and I guess there's not really an upper age. You've just got to look at the circumstances and see whether it's a fit.
Exactly. I mean, we have a lot of franchisees in their 60s.
Yeah.
Right. And even people that come to the business new at that age, clearly they're going to have a different plan to perhaps somebody that takes the business on in their 20s and 30s. We have some people that come along and say, well, actually, I'd like to retire in 5 years.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have a 5-year plan. I've got a 5-year franchise agreement. I'm going to buy this business. I'm going to work it for 5 years. And when I sell it at the end, hopefully this is a big contributor to my retirement plan.
Yeah, get it. And that's great as well. I think it's really important to discuss exit strategies with franchisees, because it's a journey, and it's a journey of a certain amount of time. And we've touched, and Simon's mentioned that the longevity with driver hire, people are staying for a long period of time. But even so, it's worth, exactly as you said there, if your plan is, I want to retire in 5 years, then you can support that franchisee on that journey, and what that plan is. Great point, Jared, and thanks for being here. We've got a couple more comments here. Let's have a look at what Will said. Will's put, Graham mentioned earlier about having franchisees ready to connect and be part of the wider network. Some franchisors can be resident and encourage this. So what benefits do you see in getting franchisees to collaborate with their peers? Yeah, you touched on that, but I think speaking to the wider network is a strong thing to do. What's your thoughts on that?
Completely. I mean, we actively encourage. I'm sure lots of franchise brands do the same. We have regional meetings, so we split the country into 5 regions. Just to make it more manageable to have mini meetings. And then 3 times a year, we have each region, the franchisees from each region will meet for a day to share ideas, share best practice. And a large part of that day isn't franchisor led. It's, giving an open forum to the franchisees to give them, to be able to share, their opinions and experiences. And then, on a wider level, we'll have a national conference, again, like many mature franchise brands, where you get the whole network together for a day. And, again, it's the sharing of ideas. So, we actively encourage it. It's clearly, you don't want your individual franchisees to feel that they're in their own silo and they're not part of a wider network, because that's what franchising is all about. It's being part of something bigger and tapping into that. So, it'd be madness not to.
No, that's great support that you offer. And I was going to ask about the support you give people along that journey, but you very conveniently answered the question really before I asked it. So that's fantastic. I suppose another question I was going to ask, and we'll get to what Simon has said here, but simply, who do you want in your network? I mean, to sort of start to try and summarize that, and you said you turn people down, is it about those values and people that are aligned with those values and have that passion and just align with your business? Is that really what it's about?
It is, yeah. And of course, that's not always it's not always the easiest thing to identify. Skills and experience is a bit easier to identify.
Yeah.
And that's why, another reason why the sale process itself, it's sensible to have over an extended period of time to give both parties the chance to get to know each other better. But yeah, values are absolutely. We've got over 100 offices. If you imagine, you get the wrong, somebody with the wrong values in the business who, doesn't take the care and this is an extreme example, but if somebody didn't take the care and attention to correctly register a driver, and a driver goes out and has a major accident, and that's going to be.
You mentioned that about that
really bad
retail, didn't you? And that's where that comes in.
So there's a danger there if you get somebody that doesn't buy into what the overall business wants to achieve, because franchising is all about a win-win. I know that probably sounds a bit cheesy,
but it is.
It's absolutely got to work for both parties.
Definitely it can't work. It has to always be a win-win. So I mean, that's fantastic to hear. And I love what you said about getting to know each other. That's what it is, isn't it? It's a trust journey. It's just getting to making sure you're aligned. Simon's put, with over 100 territories already in place, there are many greenfield sites available, or are the majority of the franchisees coming into the network reinvesting in a resale and existing driver hire business? Great question.
Yeah.
How do you approach that one? What's the
the simple answer is we don't have many greenfield sites available. Okay. We've fewer than 10 left. So there are still opportunities in some greenfield areas. The majority of sales are resales, but the benefits of somebody might be paying more money. They're tapping into something that's already there. There are typically staff that transfer. There are customers and drivers there. There's immediate revenue. So I think, in my experience, I think more people are comfortable buying a resale existing business than starting something from scratch. And actually, the skill set is subtly different between the two as well. Starting a greenfield site where you have no customers and no drivers, that franchisee is going to be doing a hell of a lot of sales activity, going out, door knocking, trying to talk to companies to persuade them to use them. Whereas if somebody buys into an existing business, there might not be that immediate pressure to try and grow it. It might be more about taking on and making sure the handover is nice and smooth, and then obviously developing the business from there. But there still are. I mean, buying in an existing business doesn't mean that there's no opportunity to grow it. Very often a resale existing territory means that there's still loads and loads of opportunity within that territory to grow.
But you've got that safety net a little bit, and you've got some of that structure already in place. Because I was going to ask you about, where does that sales strategy start? If you are in a greenfield site and you've got to find new customers, you've got to find your drivers, there's a lot of work to do at the beginning. So what a fantastic thing to do as a franchisee coming in. You've got that security of saying, well, what have the numbers been in the last few years? Where are those opportunities to grow it? And that's gives some of that reassurance, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
I just keep going back to the fact that I love that as a brand, you like to get to know your franchisees. You don't rush them. I mean, it's part of what this show is all about. This show is all about people being able to access a piece of material that allows them to get to know you as a brand. And that's what you're emulating as a company, what you're trying to do to allow people to get to know you, you to get to know them. It's that trust journey. We're sort of getting towards the end, so I'd like to now take you back to the future. I mean, it's my favorite film. I'm just going to do that. It's probably a copyright there, but I'd like to take you back to the future. So it is. So we'd like to sort of end with talking about some exciting things that are coming up in the future. You mentioned before about some technologies and some new advancements there. What does the future hold for driver hire in the next few years, I think?
I started, well, this sort of carries on really from a point I was just recently making there about, territories offering an opportunity, still having opportunities for growth and significant growth. So there's a couple of things I mentioned. One, partly because of the pandemic, or this helped accelerate it, we developed some digital registration tools So instead of traditionally a driver having to come into the office, bring their passport, driving license, ID, etc., we can entirely remotely register candidates now. So we've got facial recognition software that helps us to do the right to work check. We can still obviously we can still have a video meeting with the driver, so we can meet them and talk to them. They can complete their application online, and we can carry out all the checks we need to without physically meeting them. And the reason why this is important and will help fuel the growth of the network is that we've got lots of areas within our territories where we currently are not doing much business. The country is split into about 3,000 postcode districts. Now, I live in BD16, that's a postcode district, BD1, BD2, in around Bradford. So, all those individual postcode districts are about 3,000. We carried out some analysis fairly recently that 40% of those postcode districts across the country, we had zero revenue. And 80% of our revenue was coming from just over 400 of the 3,000 postcode districts. So lots of empty areas where we're doing little business. And the main reason for that is driver availability. Most of the drivers traditionally that we'd recruited were very close to the office, on average 9 miles from the office. So, close by. Our territories are much larger than that. So, there were postcode districts potentially 20 miles, 30 miles, 40 miles from the office, where a driver simply wouldn't drive to the office to come and register. No. So now with the digital registration tools, we can access people in those more remote areas, register them in a more effective way, and therefore easier tap into the customers that are in those areas by supplying local drivers. So I think if there's one thing that we're focusing on, and offers the great potential for a driver hire franchisee, the driver hire network, is the use of these tools to expand into these empty areas. So that technology is allowing our franchisees to operate in a different way to 3 years ago.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And it just, when you talk about those empty areas, you've just got so much opportunity. And when you're talking about resales, you're getting something that has been running and has been successful to a degree, but you've also got this expansion, especially if you're good at talking to people. You can start to get the business into more places than it was before. So it's realistic to expand that from where it is and go up a notch, isn't it?
Exactly. I mean, that's the key thing. There's other things like, we've developed some software which helps multi-site national account companies better manage their temporary labour spend. So, that's something that, they can use other agencies as well, not just driver hire, but they can manage their driver hire spend, their other agency spend using this piece of software that they've developed as well. So, it's really important not to stand still and to give franchisees tools that are going to help them talk to customers and win more business. And helps us to differentiate ourselves from our competitors, because recruitment is a very competitive sector.
Yeah, it very much is. You've got to do things to set yourself apart, which you clearly are. We are now starting to come to an end. We've had the ticker going along there with your website address, but is there what's the best way for somebody to get hold of you to start this process off?
Thank you for highlighting our website on there. We actually have that's the main driver hire website. So if somebody visits driverhire.co.uk, they'll see a whole lot of information that is relevant for drivers and for clients. We've got a specific franchise website as well. So it's simply driverhirefranchise.co.uk. and on there, or if somebody Googled Driver Hire franchise, we would we'd appear at the top of the page there. So I'd say that's a really good place to start, because you're not having to dive in straight away to a conversation with me. I mean, obviously I'd be really happy to do that, but our franchise web, so that there's lots of information on there, and somebody can, in a less pressurized way, can spend some time reading some articles. There's some franchisee videos on there as well, which we're in the process of increasing. But it's a good place to start, and our contact details are on there, Harvey. So I would say, driverhirefranchise.co.uk. Hopefully somebody would find it interesting and useful, if to work out whether driver hire might be right or not.
That's fantastic. Look, we have now come to an end. So I want to thank everyone who's been here in the audience today. It's a live show. We're going to do things with it afterwards, so you may see it on YouTube and all these sorts of things as well. But being a live show, it's fantastic to have people here, to bring them in, to hear people's thoughts, and it really does drive the show and makes this rather special. So I want to thank all of you that have been here. I also want to thank you, Graham. You've been a delightful guest, fascinating to talk to, and it's been a real pleasure for me as well. So I'd like to thank you.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it, and that hour's flown by.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it has for me too. So next week, same time, 5:15 GMT. We have another franchising brand story, this time with Ben Brooks from Agency Express. So that's going to be a fascinating story to hear. Really look forward to that one next week. So please join us next week at the same time, 5:15. And until then, have a wonderful week ahead, and goodbye.
Thanks, Harvey. Cheers.